So Dean Withers and Lily Tino have just done a debate on TikTok Live, and as someone who has covered both of these creators extensively on this channel, I think it's only fair that I hop in and discuss this debate and actually have a look at it and see who's in the right and who's in the wrong. And by that I mean objectively, because I am the only one here whose opinion can be treated seriously in any way, shape or form. Because as I'm sure you're aware, all of my videos on Dean Withers and Lily Tino were absolutely perfect, there were no flaws in any of my arguments, and they changed the world. Now obviously I'm joking around there, taking the mick a little bit, but this debate is 100% sure to be a pretty interesting one. What I am not joking about, however, is that you should not subscribe to the channel. In my last video, I got a comment saying that the more I beg for subscribers, the more likely they are not to subscribe. So, I am telling you all, unrefutably, do not subscribe to this channel. Is this gonna work? Is this gonna work at all? I guess there's only one way to find out, you know? I'll see what the sub count is saying after this video comes out, but all I'm gonna say is don't subscribe to the channel. But to that commenter who said that my threats make them not want to subscribe, just know that I have your IP address now. I'm not gonna say anything more than that, but I have it now. Anyway, I'm pretty excited for this one, so without further ado, let's just start the video, shall we?
I got a text from someone who said that you mentioned my name, so I dropped in, and then the second I dropped in, I heard you say something along the lines of that I wasn't a good example for the trans community, so just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I'll share what I know. So first and foremost, I think that there's a handful of things that you do in which serve as regressive to the trans community because they play into the hands of the stereotypes that are perpetuated by the vulgar right. You know, like for instance, I think that there's many videos on your page where you're like talking about like a hot dog sitting in Disneyland, using really simple terms to understand that could be understood by a child to talk about like sex reassignment surgery. First and foremost, I don't think that there's anything wrong with like an explanation and education surrounding sex reassignment surgery, but when you're doing it in the context of the environment of Disneyland that's designed for kids, using an example of like a literal hot dog, which is understood by kids with words that could also be understood by kids, it kind of plays into the narrative that the right sets forth surrounding that, you know, like, oh, like trans people want to like, you know, sexualize and turn all the kids trans, right?
Okay, I'm going to pause that because I don't want to play the whole thing out, but this is something that I've really been thinking about for, honestly, my entire time on the internet. Is it unfair to criticize someone purely based on how they are perceived by people who are too stupid and uneducated and ignorant to actually engage in any conversation in good faith? Because it's like humanity 101, the basics of any ethical code or moral reasoning, that one person should not be, what's the word? Representative of an entire community. Like, we are taught our whole lives not to base our opinions of a whole community off of the actions of one person in said community. So when Sabrina Carpenter put out, like, that last album cover, for example, and there was a whole stink on the internet about how men will not understand the irony that she is trying to portray here and will just, I don't know, I guess be enticed by a pretty girl in a compromising position. And I'm there like, should we really be attacking the person who is creating the content because there is a whole other group of people who are too stupid or too uncaring to actually understand the content? Because it's not Sabrina Carpenter's fault that a bunch of people won't give a fuck about the irony that is clearly trying to be portrayed there. In the same way, Lily Tino describing how transgender surgeries work, whilst yes, is absolutely going to lead to some people thinking she's trying to brainwash children into becoming transgender, obviously that isn't what she's trying to do. She is just explaining how that shit works. Is it her fault that people are going to interpret that the wrong way? In most cases, like, purposefully misinterpreting what she's saying to make transgender people seem more of a danger or more influential. I think the only thing you can really attack her on in regards to those videos is the setting in which she films them in, which is obviously Disneyland, a place targeted towards children. And when you're discussing quite risque, I guess sex-involved mechanisms and stuff, using childish terms like hot dog and popsicle, in a place like Disneyland, that is very inappropriate, right? You would not be unjustified in calling her a fucking weird freak who's clearly rage baiting people by doing this like she could have done it at home. She could have just done it at home, but she chose Disneyland to rage bait people. It's that simple. That's why I'm not like a fan of her or anything. She's not a particularly good person, and she knows what she's doing there. That there's no accidental rage bait going on there. She has chosen the setting of Disneyland because she knows that there are children around, and she knows that that will really anger a lot of people. Every excuse she gives about, I chose Disneyland because I like Disneyland, it's all bollocks. total bullshit. She chose Disneyland to rage bait people. So if you want to call that inappropriate, be my guest. I'm inclined to agree with you. And if you're inclined to call her a total fucking weirdo, a total freak for doing so, then hey, I'm not against that either. But if you want to start calling her a danger, or trying to brainwash children into becoming transgender, or even just, I don't know, a disturbance for children, that's where you start to lose me a little bit, because the implication there is that in Disneyland, a very loud place, mind you, where there's loads of people doing loads of different things, a child is going to incidentally, I don't know, stop whatever they're doing in Disneyland to listen to Lily Tino talk about these things for long enough to where they actually understand the context of what's going on and be, I don't know, disturbed by it. Like, I think you'd have to stretch pretty far to genuinely believe that there are IRL children around Lily Tino while she films those videos, listening hard enough to actually take in anything that she's saying. Obviously, on the internet, there are children that are doing that. But in Disneyland itself, I don't think it's really fair to actually make that claim. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not impossible, but how probable is it? So yeah, I'm genuinely of the impression that calling it anything more than like potentially shitty, definitely rage baity, and definitely inappropriate behavior is disingenuous in my opinion. Especially when you veer into territory of like dangerous or brainwashing or anything like that. Like that is all, that's crazy to me.
And I also can understand that that likely wasn't your intention in making the video, and rather you had set forth surrounding that, you know, like, oh, like trans people want to like, you know, sexualize and turn all the kids trans, right? Which isn't true. And I also can understand that that likely wasn't your intention in making the video, and rather you had good intention. But I still do think that the real world outcome of the right being able to take advantage of that and use it as an example insofar as why they are justified in their vocal prejudice can definitely be served as an example of how I would like deem you as a little bit regressive to the trans community.
Okay. Well, here's what I'll say to that. Yes, Disney is partially for kids, but Disney is also a thing for adults. A lot of adults love Disney. There's a whole word for it.
Okay. Lily Tino's point is stupid here, but I do want to respond to Dean's point because I think there is some things that he's missing there. And that is that I don't think we need to cater to the right at all. Like, I am not here as someone who is on the left trying to fucking coddle the right into like thinking that I'm on their side in any way, shape, or form. Like, if someone is trying to force a condemnation out of me for like an incidental leftist doing some form of violence, right, for example, I am not gonna do that because the right have a history of not condemning violence despite clearly being the more violent opposition. As in, clearly, by the way, like very obviously, over the past couple decades, the vast majority of violent political crimes have come from the right. Take January 6th, that's the obvious example. You will never hear any right-wing political pundit or anyone with any sort of political power condemn the actions of the right on January 6th. So if they're not willing to turn the temperature down and condemn their actions, why should I have to condemn the murder of Charlie Kirk, for example? Now, that is not me being heartless at all. It's not me approving the murder at all. And although I am very aware that a lot of people on the right could spin me saying that as me defending the murder of Charlie Kirk, I don't give a fuck. I am not going to change my opinions or coddle to them just to stop them from saying that. If Lily Tino wants to make educational videos on the transgender surgery and the experience or whatever, even if they are targeted towards children, I say knock yourself out and do not let transphobic people on the right stop you from doing so because they're going to use it to dog on the transgender community. I would obviously say, don't do them in Disneyland, and also don't use terminology like hot dog and ice pop, or lollipop, or cake pop. That was the one that she used. For more reasons than one. One, I think it's overly infantilizing. Two, I think it's just better for children to use the correct terminology like penis and vagina, because not using those words implies that there's something wrong with the words penis or vagina, and that has a whole host of issues that we could get into, because like, if kids grow up thinking that there's something wrong with genitalia or something like that, or something shameful about it, that can actually contribute to a increased risk of not reporting sex crimes if they are to happen to said child at some point in their life. Like, that is a highly documented, highly provable phenomenon that has happened with people who are shamed into using words like penis or vagina and using code words instead at a very young age. So my advice to Lily Tino would be, don't do it in Disneyland and don't use stupid words. Although those are definitely things she does intentionally to rage bait people. So in that respect, I do think she is actually being regressive to the trans transgender community, but just not for the reasons that Dean is stating, if that makes sense. Lily obviously hasn't gone there, and her immediate retort is to talk about how Disneyland is actually for adults, which is a very stupid talking point for very obvious reasons, which is annoying because I feel like there could have been potential for a real conversation here, but I mean, I don't like where this is going, to be honest with you.
I think there's a narrative that we really haven't talked about enough, which is when you're talking about like, oh, the right is using this as ammunition against us. The right looks at this and says, ooh, we can use this to say, hey, look at this, trans girl who is essentially, even though none of the videos include children, I'm not talking to kids, I'm just by myself at Disney talking to a camera, but you can look at those videos and say, ooh, it's ammunition. But at the same time, I could sit in my apartment with a corn dog. I could sit in my apartment and use like actual anatomical whatever, right? And people would be making these exact same arguments, right? Like, it doesn't matter if I'm at Disney. It doesn't matter what we do because we're not the ones who are inspiring them to be transphobic, right? That transphobia exists with or without my video.
Okay, so she actually took that point about Disney being a place for adults and took it to a place that I agree a lot more with, which is that no matter where she was doing it, no matter how she was talking about the transgender experience, people would still find a problem with it. And that much is absolutely true. I don't think there's any arguing that. I don't think Dean is actually going to argue against that, just from what I know about him. I think he is, knowledgeable and educated enough to know that what Lily is saying here is absolutely true. However, doing it in Disney and using corn dogs or whatever does make it worse. Because for sure, if Lily Tino was just in her apartment talking about what being trans is, people would still comment, hey, this is a child's app. They shouldn't be knowing about any of this sort of thing. And you teaching it is brainwashing. Like, that would happen. Absolutely, it would happen. But just because that transphobia exists, it doesn't mean you need to fully commit to this role as the villain they will try and paint you out as, and actually end up doing things that genuinely veer into the territory of a little bit inappropriate or a little bit, I hesitated there because I was going to say dangerous, and I said not to call her dangerous, but she's dangerous she's not even dangerous. She is potentially spouting dangerous rhetoric in a very indirect way and a very different manner from how most people mean when they call her dangerous. Like, when I say she is potentially being dangerous, I'm using it in a very nuanced, like, these words can lead to bad outcomes in the future for children who choose to adopt them, which I've already gone over, right? That is what I mean when I use the word dangerous. The type of dangerous I was combating was obviously, this is dangerous because, it's really inappropriate to talk like this around children. You're gonna fucking traumatize them and then turn them trans after traumatizing them because they're so traumatized, and traumatized people turn trans. Or whatever bullshit people come up with to, I guess, justify their opinions on how teaching people about transgender people turns them transgender. I'm interested to see what happens next, so I'm gonna let the debate play out.
I'm going to use anything and everything we do against us. I just happen to like being at Disney World. I grew up on shows like Good Eats, Mythbusters, Bill Nye. Those shows explain interesting but sometimes difficult to understand concepts using engaging, fun things like food and, models and stuff. And I think that, as a trans person myself, as a trans creator, the number one thing in my inbox is always, what about bottom surgery? Tell me about that. I want to know about that. And I'm happy to talk about it because I do think it's shrouded in so much mystery and cis people why would you do that? And I'm happy to answer it. And I also love Disney. So that's why I made that video.
Okay, so first and foremost, I feel like if you were right in the sense of, well, regardless if I were to film this at Disney or at home, they're still going to find a way to use it against me. I would argue that, sure, it is true that a shit ton of people hold a whole lot of prejudice against trans people, and they will use nearly any goddamn action from a trans person in order to, spawn in transphobia. But I feel like what would refute that particular view as it would relate to your actions doing this at Disney, and I like that whole thematic idea of notion of, doing it and teaching it to children, fulfilling that narrative stereotyped by the right, is that you also hear a lot of pushback from people on the left who would be conventionally pro-trans on this subject. And because you hear a lot of pushback from a lot of people on the left who are more conventionally pro-trans, compared to maybe the actions of other trans people who don't get that same pushback from the pro-trans group, would definitely demonstrate that there's still yet a way, insofar as how you're pushing intentionally inflammatory content that pushes the boundaries in ways that lead to more fear-mongering from the right about trans people.
Okay, I hear you. Let me ask you a question then. I am a very clocky trans woman.
Okay, we'll let her talk, obviously, but I do want to go over what Dean said there because that's my job, of course. I think it's a good point. I think it's good to say that when the right is not the only ones criticizing you and your own side is saying, hey man, this is a wee bit too far, you're making us uncomfortable here, we don't think that this is good at all. I do think that is like a reasonable basis to say, okay, maybe I should pull it back just a slight bit if the people that I am in support of and I respect are not respecting my decision here. And that's not to say that you need to be in complete concordance with everything that your side believes. Like, there's a lot of opinions that a lot of leftists have that I would disagree with, I'm sure. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily a bad person or have an immoral opinion or am pursuing those opinions immorally or unethically. It just means that there is a disagreement. Do you think it is also important to maybe state that a lot of people use Lily Tino as like a measuring stick for them not being brainwashed? Like, a lot of people on the left see Lily Tino as the person to go to for like, okay, look, this is great. I can show that I am in support of trans people, but then I can critique this one who's very easy to critique and like the safe transgender person to critique while still being seen as an ally to prove that I'm not brainwashed and won't mindlessly, you know, back up every transgender person I see online. Without doubt, a lot of people are using Lily Tino as some type of tool to prove that they're nuanced in one way or another, when really I don't think critiquing Lily Tino requires any form of nuance at all, because it's become the safe opinion, both on the right and the left, to hate on Lily Tino. I am not one for hate piles or dogpiling or joining popular opinions just because they're popular for likes or whatever the fuck. This is a little bit off topic, but Doja Cat recently put a statement out in regards to the whole Timothée Chalamet quote about ballet dying and not wanting movies to end up the same way. And Doja Cat a few days ago was like, this is disgusting, I can't believe you would say something. And then like very recently, I think like yesterday, was like, you know what, I'm sorry for speaking out against Timothée Chalamet. I only did it because everyone else was doing it, and I saw it as a very easy avenue to get likes and views, and I know that people would agree with me. And I thought this is the most like honest thing that I have seen from any celebrity, and I actually really respect it. And I feel like a lot of people do that initial thing on Lily Tino, like they just hate on her because they know it's very easy to hate on her, and people will agree with you for it and think you're nuanced for it. When actually defending Lily Tino and not mindlessly dogpiling on her is actually the harder, more difficult, and more nuanced thing to do in this situation, which is why most people don't even try, in my opinion. Like, I don't know, like for those who have watched this channel, you'll know about this, but there was a creator called Anime Ribbon who said that they had like an interview with Lily Tino's former friend, and people genuinely believed this. Hundreds of thousands of people believed that Lily Tino's former friend was being interviewed by this creator called Anime Ribbon and had exposed that they were faking their transgender identity, they were grifting off of it, that they hated women, and that they hated transgender people, in fact, and that they loved like just pearly things and all this bullshit, right? And then when you actually went and watched the interview, it was Anime Ribbon talking to themselves in a deeper voice. So there was no MP4, no video of it. It was just an audio recording of Anime Ribbon saying something and then pausing before saying something else with a voice filter on to make her voice deeper. She literally sat in a room and spoke to herself and pretended she was talking to Lily Tino's former friend.
Hey bestie, and welcome to a very special episode of the Plobcast. I do apologize in advance for my regular listeners.
Okay, so that's Ribbon's voice, right? And now here is John Doe, but we pitch shifted it up.
I don't know where to start either. I guess
It's the same girl! It's the same girl! It's the same fucking girl! I don't want anyone chatting shit. That's herself. She's talking to herself. She sat in her room talking to herself, and she tried to justify it by saying that they don't have the fanciest editing, and that she put her hand up when she was going to stop talking so that they could stop talking, so that they didn't need to pitch, because they couldn't pitch shift it correctly. All this effort to justify why they don't speak at the same time is because she's doing it her fucking self. But because it's so easy and so safe to dog on Lily Tino now, people genuinely believed it, even though it was the most obvious pile of bullshit you could ever imagine. It was disgustingly inflammatory, disgustingly slanderous, and disgustingly transphobic. People rode with it, and people believed it just because Lily Tino is not generally liked on the internet. I think it is so important for people to realize that they can have their own opinions on things. After they watch a scathing TikTok or a scathing video on another person, instead of just, going with it immediately, seriously sit back and just think, like, what have I just watched? what evidence was provided? What do I really think about this? Because most people don't have time, man. It's not your fault necessarily. You're not dumb for going with things. I don't know. It's just sort of an interesting thought experiment. Like, just really think about the media you're consuming sometimes, because it's so easy to lie and it's so easy to just create bandwagons and dog piles. I know I've gone a little bit off topic from the debate itself. I do think that this is a genuinely productive conversation so far, and I'm excited for what's to come. So I guess we'll let it keep playing out.
I get a common criticism for me is that, like, well, you're not, working hard enough or doing enough to, pass, right? So let's say that I was a passing trans woman who had a different voice, whose face looked a different way, who you maybe couldn't even tell necessarily was trans. Let's say I made that exact same video in Disney. Do you think that the exact same criticisms would be levied against me if that were the case?
Well, I mean, I'd be making the exact same criticism about you, given that it created the same fear-mongering, right? Like, by pushing that inflammatory boundary, right?
Well, that's the thing, though. Would it, right? I'm not talking about, like, your response to the fear-mongering. Do you think the fear-mongering would even happen?
Yeah, I do.
Like,
so listen, I could agree that maybe it wouldn't be exacerbated to the same extent. However, I still do think it would exist, because ultimately, okay, a lot of the inflammatory pushback that you hear from the right to create fear-mongering generated on the basis of your content isn't saying this trans woman who in their eyes, and by the way, I'm not saying this is from my eyes, from their eyes doesn't pass, is like, explaining this in a sense in which could be considered inflammatory and like, sexualizing children, fulfilling the stereotype. Or they're just saying a trans woman is doing this, right? I feel like, you take a trans woman regardless if they do or don't pass in the eyes of the bigoted right, and you put them in that position, and we're going to hear a very similar response. And I feel like this response isn't just shared by people on the right. It's kind of something that I'm explaining to you right now. And I know the same reservation is held by a lot of people on the left that are conventionally pro-trans. You know what I mean? Like, once again, like being intentionally inflammatory and kind of like pushing this boundary to generate that fear-mongering. But maybe it is unintentional and you have good intention when you do it. Or maybe it is intentional. It's for like more views that ultimately then has like more negative second-order reciprocal effects on other trans people and on other members of the trans community.
Okay. All right. I guess.
I think it's possible that it would still be talked about to a large extent if Lily Tino was passing, I suppose. I wouldn't be so sure about it as Dina's, though. Like, I genuinely do believe that Lily Tino not passing, so to speak, is a huge reason as to why she is so talked about. If she passed as well as, I don't know, Blair White, for example, passed, I don't think there would be nearly as much hysteria or nearly as much conversation about her. Actually, no, there definitely wouldn't be, because she wouldn't be getting misgendered at restaurants. If she passed as a woman as well as Blair White did, no one would have the mistake of calling them he. And that was what got them so viral to begin with, was people mistakenly calling her he at restaurants. I can guarantee you Blair White does not have that fucking problem, and as long as that problem doesn't exist for Lily Tino, their internet virality also doesn't exist. So this whole stink, this whole conversation, I don't think it is nearly as big if Lily Tino was passing.
My question to you then would be, what is your solution then, right? Like, is the idea that in order to fight back against transphobia, to change people's minds on like, hey, we're not sexualizing kids, we're not, invading your bathrooms and taking your sports away, right? Is the idea then to be like well-behaved model citizens, never say anything even a little bit controversial? Are we supposed to kind of be these like goody two-shoes? Because that kind of seems like what you're suggesting, right? Like, yes, I am a provocative content creator. That's just kind of who I am. That's who I've always been. But at the end of the day, when I make the content I make, the idea is not just to rage bait, right? My goal is not to make people mad. It is to provoke a response, right? Even from people like, for example, my dad's side of the family is deeply conservative, and they will never, ever be the kind of people who are on the front lines with picket signs against us, right? They will never, ever, speak out against, let's say they had a trans colleague. They would never make that situation uncomfortable, but they will always vote red, right? Okay. So when I make my content, the idea is to provoke responses from people who are the silent majority of trans folks.
Total bullshit. I don't believe her for a second there. This is the first instance where I'm like, you know what? No nuance, no exaggeration here. Lily Tino's fucking lying. Like, and she's being shitty there for sure. When she says her intent is not to rage bait, she's lying. Her intent is absolutely to rage bait. There is no reasonable excuse for making those videos in Disneyland but to rage bait. She's not obvious. She's not just lying, but she's obviously lying there. Like, no, these videos are rage bait, and they're rage baiting people, and you continuing to do them when you know they're rage baiting people is more intentional rage bait, because you know that the rage bait works and it's getting you an audience. And I guess maybe you like that. You like being popular. You like making money. But don't say that it's not rage bait. And also, I don't know. I feel like the statement, it's not rage bait, I'm just trying to provoke a reaction. So when you say you're provoking a reaction, it's not a good reaction that you're trying to provoke, is it? I feel like provoke a reaction in this context is just... It's just a more majestic way of saying rage bait. Because you could easily just say rage provocation instead of rage bait, right? I'm provoking I'm not rage baiting. I'm simply provoking rage. I'm not rage baiting. I am just promoting mild discomfort.
So point number one, you said, well, Dean, right, it's either, right, that I do this thing that you're accusing of being like intentionally inflammatory and playing into the stereotypes perpetuated by the right about trans people, or I'm some like complacent goody two-shoes. And I don't think that that's a true dichotomy. I think that there's a way to make the content in which you do in advocation for the trans community without playing into the stereotypes perpetuated by the right. And I think that way is demonstrated by many other trans creators and trans influencers on a daily basis. And in fact, I'll actually give you a test in which I think you could use to prove this to yourself. Earlier, you said, Dean, I think that we would see the same pushback against me and my content, given that I made it from my bedroom at home compared to a hot dog at Disneyland. So prove me wrong. Okay, make that same type of content from the bedroom at home for the next year, and I bet by the end of that year that there'll be a significantly more positive view about you from like the left, and there won't be as strong like counter responses against you from people on the right. You know what I mean? And on top of that,
you're right. I know you're right. I agree that would probably be the case. But also, if I were to make content out of my apartment for a year, two things would happen. The first is it just wouldn't be interesting content, because I wouldn't be interested in making it, because I like to get out and about, right? Like, I have no interest in hiding from the world, right?
Oh, so you do it on purpose. So you do it on purpose, knowing that if you create the content at Disneyland,
absolutely,
it'll be more provocative and inflammatory. Okay, well, this is one of those situations where I don't think that all publicity is good publicity.
See, this is what I mean, though. Like, I don't know why Dean's not calling this out. You are admitting that you are trying to provoke people. That's rage bait. You're trying to rage bait people. Like, you have essentially just said, oh, I would do them at home, but if I did them at home, people wouldn't get angry and I wouldn't get enough views. So don't say that you're not trying to rage bait people when you're very obviously trying to rage bait people. You clearly don't give a fuck that people are using this to fuel transphobic rhetoric on the internet. You clearly don't give a fuck that people on your own side are trying to convince you that you're not doing a good thing here. You don't give a fuck that you're making even the left uncomfortable with your objectively inappropriate comments in an objectively inappropriate space to make said comments. This is why I can't be convinced that Lily Tino is a good person despite all the defenses that I have sung for her in the past. Despite me, I don't know, refuting the claim that she is a predator or a danger to children or anything along those lines, I don't dispute that she's definitely not a particularly good person and that she is a really shitty rage baiter and she's just a bad creator. But she stinks. She's a really stinky creator.
And I think that other trans people really feel the receiving end of that bad publicity, because you are fulfilling, now intentionally we're learning, a lot of the stereotypes perpetuated by people on the right. Like, yes, sure, like a trans person going on the internet and explaining gender sex reassignment surgery with words that like 6-year-olds could understand, using a hot dog at Disneyland, is something that will be provocative, is something that will generate that publicity. But you must understand that ultimately that publicity doesn't push the pendulum forward for the social acceptance of trans people across the globe.
Well, some of it does. Like the explaining transgender surgery with terminology that a 6-year-old can understand, that's fine. That much is fine. It's the other stuff that there's more of a problem there, like the at Disneyland, the corn dog thing, that's all bullshit. But explaining transgender surgery to 6-year-olds, that's not inherently harmful by any means. I would say maybe it's unnecessary. The surgery part, at least. Like 6-year-olds don't need to know about the surgical process of becoming transgender. I would say it's too early for that. But to know that transgender people exist, I think that is absolutely a thing that should be being done. Especially because in today's day and age, there's a lot of 6-year-olds who might have transgender family, for example, or definitely members of their family that are LGBTQ plus IA, whatever the fuck. LGBTQ plus IA, Jesus. Am I really an ally when I stutter that much just saying the words LGBTQ+? That's me, man. I'm secretly a homophobe. I can't even say the words without getting all spooked out.
In America, and inevitably, a lot of trans people will end up feeling the receiving end of the bigotry that will be spontaneously created the moment more people on the right are able to convince others that trans people are delusional, right? Trans people aren't delusional. Okay, trans people aren't attacking kids. Trans people don't want to make your son, become a girl. Trans people don't want to like go into the women's restrooms and take pictures of little girls and take advantage of them. That's all a lie, okay? And it's a narrative that is being pushed by the GOP in order to get Americans distracted on trans people, on that 1%. So then they're not thinking about the top 1% that's taking their healthcare away, sending their kids to war, and fucking them over on a daily basis through bad public policy only for the benefit of the richest among us. And I feel like as if you're kind of playing into that narrative a little bit, because then you legitimize the stereotypes falsely through the eyes of the bigots, because now they could point towards like real world examples of where these stereotypes materialize. But like, once again, this is a very nuanced conversation where you're not like 100% a bad guy. I do think it's a good thing to be like advocating for like the social acceptance of trans people. Trans women are women, trans men are men. I just simply think that there's a better way to go about it. But ultimately, I want to ask you to listen to me on this point. I'd ask you to listen to like the trans community on this point, which obviously I don't speak for.
You talk about listening to the trans community.
Can I hop in just for 2 seconds really quick? I'll let you both finish your conversation.
All right, everyone shut the fuck up. This bloke needs to hop in and explain the opinion we've all been waiting for. You might think I'm stuttering there, but I'm actually not. I'm genuinely trying to remember I don't know this. I don't know his name. I don't know who this is. Who the fuck is this guy? Well, we're about to find out, right? Because he's about to make his grand entrance. Everyone shut the fuck up, right? Stop what you're doing. Because what this guy's about to say is more important than whatever the fuck you have going on. He's probably a totally nice guy. I don't know why I'm being a dick here. It's just, I'm just like, who is this guy? And he's just randomly turned up in the middle of a debate. So who knows, man? Let's see what he has to say, shall we?
Lily, sorry, if I can ask, what are your pronouns?
She, her.
She, her. Okay, perfect. Really quick, and I'll let you guys have it. Chat. Please stop the misgendering in the chat. Be respectful. Keep it together. It doesn't matter whose opinion you actually prefer, whether you agree, disagree. Don't be disrespectful. Don't engage in any type of transphobia in the chat. Please, please, please stop the misgendering. Stop being intentional. The mods are on it. I'm helping the mods as well. Keep it in the guardrails. Sorry, I'll let you two finish your conversation.
Okay. That was actually a very reasonable point to step in and say. So my bad. He's probably the moderator or something like that. I do actually remember this. I was getting DMs when this debate took place live, being like, oh, Dean Withers is debating Lily Tino, you should hop in. So I hopped into the stream, and it was just as Lily was leaving, and the chat was just full of, bye-bye, Nick, bye-bye, Nick, bye-bye, Nick. And I was like, oh, yeah, this isn't great, is it? Like, but why are these people even watching a Dean Withers live stream? Like, are you all like stupid, or like, do you just not understand what you're watching, or that everyone who understands the points being made here would vehemently disagree with you and probably think you're a bit of a prick for saying shit like that? I think the misgendering from people on the left regarding Lily Tino is, it's disgusting. Sort of implies that, like, you're not allowed to be transgender if you also are a bad person. It's like, no, just because you're a shitty person, that doesn't make you not transgender. It just means you're both transgender and a shitty person. The two are not mutually exclusive. And by implying that they are, you actually put a lot of pressure on transgender people to feel like, okay, if I am not absolutely perfect, if I step out of line even once, my transness will be denied by people on my own side even. So I'd recommend everyone just to be a bit less of a fucking douchebag.
Right. So, yes, when I make my content, it is provocative, right? Like, I understand that when people see a trans person at Disney World, and specifically when I'm talking about the things that I'm talking about, it can provoke response, okay? That response comes from a place of transphobia, right? You and I can probably agree, like, oh, when people get mad about this, it is coming from a transphobic place.
No, not necessarily. I've seen Dean's eyes sort of widen a little bit there, because I think he agrees that that is a vast generalization, and that it's been pretty clearly established that not all of the criticisms towards Lily Tino are transphobic. Like, to label every critique against you as coming from a transphobic place is also a crutch and a cop-out and terrifically unfair towards the people who have genuine, good faith criticisms for you. Like me, for example. Obviously, I'm gonna say that my criticisms are good faith and reasonable or whatever, but I guess that's for other people to decide. Like, oh, you can't really judge that on your own merit. But either way, let's see what Dean has to say there, because I feel like he's gonna object pretty strongly.
Like, my position in this conversation is coming from a place of transphobia?
No.
Okay, so then I think, so you just admitted that there could be dissent to the content in which you create that doesn't come from a place of transphobia.
You're reacting to people's reactions, right? Like the nastiness, the right-wing people watching this and saying, oh, this proves our theory correct. That's what you're reacting to, right? You're not reacting to my content. This is you have a meta reaction to my content, right? If you saw this in a vacuum, it would be a different conversation.
Okay, yeah. So you're arguing that like the non-meta reactions of people seeing it and then being really upset is rooted within transphobia as it would relate to people on the right. Is that what you're arguing?
That when a bigot watches my video and sees me in Disney World, they think, oh, Lily is, got like a audience of children that she's waving a corn dog at. Okay. Right? Like that's what people think is happening. It's not happening. I'm an adult that enjoys Disney World. I'm a content creator that talks about trans issues. And also you talk about the trans community like it's monolithic, right? Like the trans community is massive. And you say like, well, you should talk to people in the trans community. I have. Right. And it's not as black and white as you make it. Right. There are people who look at the content I make and say, I get what she's going for. Right. Just because certain loud voices, especially right wing voices like Eden and the Doll and Blair White, who are used in a completely different way by the right to perpetuate stereotypes about trans people. Right. What I'm doing has like a lot of thought put into it, right? And not everyone sees it the way that you see it, and not all left-wing people see it the way they see it.
Okay, I guess a few things. First of all, Dean may be having a meta reaction to this all. I don't know why Dean isn't critiquing the action itself, because it is undeniably inappropriate and fucking freaky to make those videos in Disneyland using corn dogs and cake pops. Like, that is wrong. You should not be doing that. And that is not a meta reaction. That is me simply talking about the content itself and the character of the person presenting it purely to provoke and rage bait people. Like, as much as I know that, for example, my opinion or my, I suppose, decision to not condemn acts of left-wing violence as vehemently as a lot of right-wingers would demand that I do, will provoke rage from a lot of right-wing people. But that is not me intentionally going out to do something simply to provoke that rage. That is me simply doing what I find to be moral and ethical and within my set of moral guidelines, and whatever reaction I get out of that is purely incidental. It would be completely different if I was only doing that just so I could provoke a certain reaction out of people. That's I don't know. The two things are so different, right? Even though I'd be doing the same thing, the intent there changes absolutely everything. The thing is, Lily isn't committing to the lie here, because at the start, she says shit like, oh, I went to Disneyland because I like Disneyland. I just happened to be there because I'm there a lot and I like making these videos. And then she goes, no, I'm actually there to provoke people and rage bait people. She doesn't say rage bait, but that's what she means when she says provoke. She just doesn't want to say it because she knows the implications that come with that word, so she flowers it up a little bit, but she's saying rage bait just in more, I guess, complicated terms. So it's like, which one is it? Are you making the videos there because you like being there, or because you want to provoke a reaction out of people? Obviously, it's the latter, because if you were making the videos there because you liked being there, you would have no issue with making the videos elsewhere in your own apartment or a private domicile where there are no children around. You would have no problem doing that. But you don't want to do that because it won't get nearly as many views, which is why you had to pivot to, oh no, I am trying to provoke a reaction. It was all bullshit, basically. You're a liar. She's a liar. She's a weasel. Absolutely.
You talk about left-wing people who are typically pro-trans, but those people are only pro-trans to a point, right? Even the left has its own deeply ingrained transphobia to deal with, right? Like things that you might not even think about. Like I deal with that kind of stuff. Every trans person deals with some level of baseline transphobia that we were raised with, right? Like what I'm working towards is a world in which an adult trans woman can go to Disney World, right? Enjoy herself, right? And not be seen as a predator, right?
She's right, but it's not relevant here. Like, I feel like this is all just smokescreen. But she is right, though. Like I said before, Anime Ribbon is a transgender creator who also happens to be, in my opinion, one of the most transphobic people I've ever covered on this channel. She's definitely gonna make another response to it. You know what? Maybe she'll make a video talking to one of my ex-friends, and she'll pitch her voice up and say it's a female friend of mine back in school. So everyone keep your eye out on that interview, if you want to know a little more about me and my awful wrongdoings. He even made a video like a month after our whole mini saga that I was just treating as a joke, because realistically that's what it was, where he implied that I was like a predator because people in the comments were referring to me as like Dankyjabo or whatever. Like, it's clearly a joke that I do not endorse. I think that shit's weird. But they were on camera acting as though like there were hundreds of these there were like 2 or 3, and they were acting as though I was like begging people to call me daddy in the comments and all this shit, and that they were all minors. And it's like, well, first of all, how do you know they're minors? Did they all say, oh, hi Dankyjabo, by the way, I'm 13 years old. Secondly, I'm obviously not, you can watch my videos, I do not endorse that shit. I'm not promoting it by any means. But hey, man, it wouldn't be the first time that I've unapologetically been implied to be a pedophile online. And at least Anime Ribbon wasn't spineless enough to fake apologize and then delete his apology later. I'll give him that.
I listen, I think that's a good goal.
I'm almost done. Even without making those videos, right? The corn dog videos, even just posting selfies of myself at Disney World and streaming, just eating food, like not doing any sort of scripted content, those comments were the same exact thing. Oh, grooming children. Oh, you're going looking after kids, right? Like, those prejudices already exist, whether or not I am making scripted content that is provocative.
I think it's a good goal to want to achieve the goal of like more societal trans acceptance. I just don't think you're going to achieve that goal by talking about genitalia at Disneyland.
Okay. I mean,
do you see the point?
My goal is one drop in a bucket, right? I'm not like, yes, this video is going to solve the problem, right? I make videos, and when I think about them, I'm thinking maybe I can use this interesting backdrop, this catchy backdrop, and this provocative concept to explain a concept to some people who don't know about it.
Do you think that video pushed the pendulum? Did it help?
In terms of what?
To achieve that goal of more like pro-trans acceptance in society.
I think that video taught some people about bottom surgery, and that it was an interesting, funny, and engaging way of doing it.
But ultimately, the amount of people that were taught about bottom surgery.
Now, the rebuttal here should be, but ultimately, you could have done that at home. Even if you want to say something along the lines of like, oh, I need to gain my audience somehow, and I need to provoke or whatever. It's like, okay, now you have that audience. Let's focus on genuine education and not rage bait anymore. Like, you've done a good job baiting the algorithm and working your way up to a sizable amount, and people are genuinely watching you now. You've got a lot of fans, you've got a lot of haters, but you also do have a lot of fans. So make good, genuine, educational content that isn't rage baity anymore, and it will get views. Not as many views as your regular videos, but you will get views because people give a fuck about you, and you have an opportunity to do something actually good here that isn't as intentionally provocative as you usually do. But I don't think she will do that because I don't think she actually cares about the things that she claims to care about. I think she cares a lot more about views and money and a lot less about genuine education and genuine aid towards the trans community as much as she claims.
Surgery legitimately through that video of you talking about genitalia at Disneyland. Do you think that the pros of more people knowing about the way that bottom surgery operates was offset by the harm of legitimizing or at least perceptionally legitimizing a far-right stereotype by materially giving them an example to point towards to push the pendulum in the wrong direction?
So this is the core of what I get into a lot of conversations with people about, which is creating, right? It's like the idea of inception, right? Am I idea in people's minds that was never there before that trans people are predators? Or is that deep-seated prejudice that was always there and needs to be addressed brought to the surface by my content?
You know what, Loki? All right, I think I'm just going to leave you this, and I'm probably going to move back onto the debates. I wouldn't care if it's like a cis or a trans person. If anybody was talking about genitals at Disney, I would think it's fucking weird. You know, I'm just going to be real. Like, clearly, I think that the reaction of, oh, that's fucking weird is going to be exacerbated due to the fact that you're trans, and that, like, as you said, is going to be rooted within transphobia, 110%. But it's like, just don't even give them that. You know what I mean? And it's like, in most situations where it's like, like if I do this thing, we're going to have a response of like, say, racism for black people. Should we like do this thing even though we know it'll generate that response? Or should we like be complacent with not doing that thing because of the response of the generation of more racism? Like clearly, okay, right? It's not like bad to do something if it would provoke somebody to be racist in a reaction to you, because that's not a grounding for not engaging in an action, or else we would be looking at Rosa Parks like a really bad person because a lot of people were really racist in response to her not sitting on the bus where society told her that she was supposed to. But the reason why I feel like the same line of thought doesn't follow, but the reason why I don't think that train of thought follows in this circumstance is because in all reality, okay, Rosa Parks sitting in the place in the bus where she wasn't supposed to according to society on its own wasn't wrong. In the vacuum, that wasn't wrong. But I feel like in the vacuum, it actually like kind of is a little like weird, wrong, antisocial to be talking about genitalia at Disneyland. And that's ultimately why it's something that you shouldn't do.
Yeah, I'm glad he took the gloves off there a little bit and went, you know what, it is fucking weird what you're doing at Disneyland and talking about it is weird. And it is. He's right there. I think that whole spiel he went on is actually very intellectually honest, and I agree with him completely there. I'm not even like a massive Dean Withers fan by any means. I think he says some intelligent things. I think that at the moment he is probably a net good for the left. I think my biggest complaint with him is that I would prefer him to debate more credible and educated people as opposed to just random idiot people on TikTok that are like always really dumb. Like when you go through his YouTube channel, it's all just complete fools. They're all total idiots. And especially when you've criticized people on the right for doing similar things and only debating like uninformed college kids, for example, I think it would do you some good to maybe veer away from, obviously you can still do these debates, that's fine, but it's getting to a point where I'm exclusively seeing him debate idiots on TikTok. And that's, I know that's off topic by the way, but I've made my opinion on Lily Tino pretty succinct in this video so far, so I thought I'd give a little pros and cons to Dean Withers in my opinion as well. I do want to stress though, I do think he is a net good. I just have my issues with him like any person. You're allowed to criticize people that you think aren't horrible. And even if you disagree with me there, like I hope you can respect the opinion if that makes sense.
Why can't I talk about
wait, can I hop in for just 2 seconds and kind of give the perspective on why? So the one thing that I will say is that like I think that advocating for a purpose or a cause is always important, especially if it actually means something to you and you want to use whatever way that you think is best to amplify your voice to do so. So I'll never knock anyone for amplifying their voice. But the one thing that I will say is that understanding being a marginalized community and a minority, understanding that the targets that we can paint on other people back just by, as creators, us putting a certain message out, is something that we always have to be mindful of. You, me, Dean, all of us have a higher responsibility because we're given a platform by the people that believe in us. And since we're given a platform by the people that believe in us, we have to make sure that we're being good stewards of what they give us. And so just because we have the privilege of doing certain things doesn't mean that other people within our community will have the privilege of doing that as well. And in the same sense that just because we're someone that people see all the time, we may not be as in danger. Like other people that are connected or associated with us can be in danger because of what we do. So we just have to be more mindful of the things that we do to make sure that we're not perpetuating harm to the people that we're advocating for. That's a huge thing.
And then also I think we can agree to disagree here. I mean, look, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. The trans community is not monolithic. A lot of people see what I'm doing and appreciate it. And
but are you not worried about those people that you're putting in jeopardy and harming?
Well, who's really putting them in jeopardy, right? Is it me? Because who we really need to be talking about is the actual bigots, right? How am I responsible for that?
Well, I think more than anything, what we need to talk about is privilege, right? And while I get your point, I'm not saying that you're wrong in the sense of people who are actually inflicting the violence. It's very privileged to not sit here and see that there's a possibility of violence that is being perpetuated by people with hate, ignorance, and bigotry. I'm not giving them a pass. I'm just saying that we as creators have to be more mindful of this. Like we have to make sure that we're not putting other people in jeopardy because we directly won't be affected. That's all I'm saying.
Also, point number one, by saying that, you're saying that the trans community is monolithic when you argued it's not monolithic like 3 minutes ago. And point number two, you said, why is it
How
wrong
am I
to
saying
talk
the
about...
trans community is monolithic?
One moment. And then this is the point that I wanted to
Ow.
address a bit ago. You also asked me why it's wrong to talk about genitalia at Disneyland, because genitalia is a place predominantly for children.
Genitalia is a place predominantly for children. No, dude, you can't say that, man. Oh no, you don't want children. You don't want children in genitalia. What the fuck? I know he misspoke, but God, that's like the worst time to misspeak in the whole video. Genitalia is predominantly a place for children. Unironically, is one of the funniest things I think Dean has ever said, and it was a fucking mistake. Which is the only reason why it's like acceptable, by the way. Obviously, if you said that on purpose, this would be a whole different video, I think. But Lily Tino objects with no, it's not, and she's quite strong, sort of headstrong in that opinion, when it's like, no, it obviously is a place predominantly for children, you idiots. I think she knows that. And she's just in denial, though.
Genitalia is a place predominantly for children.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is.
Have you ever heard, like, literally, there are the word Disney adults. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, but the only reason that term exists is because it's an exception. It's like the term male feminist, right? That is more of an exception than the rule. So the qualifier of male is added there, or STEM girly even, right? STEM is a very male-dominated field. So when most people say STEM worker, they will think man, which is why you sometimes qualify by saying STEM girly. When people think Disney fan or person who goes Disneyland, they think child. Generally, this is not going to be like a definite rule by any means. That's why Disney adult exists, right? It's like all these terms, there's qualifiers added to them purely because they are exceptions.
Right? Like
Why,
Disney
I have a question.
For adults.
Why is Disney Kids not a thing? Because it's already by default a place for kids.
And adults.
No, because you just said
They
yourself.
call it Disney.
Adults is its own thing that people use as a phrase for adults that go to Disney, because by default, Disney is designed to be a place for kids. There's no such thing as Disney Kids because by default, it's for kids. Therefore, you have to give it its own label when an adult goes there, like Disney Adults.
Yeah.
You get my
right.
point? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I understand the point you are trying to prove. I understand what you're trying to say. Firmly disagree. And look, I think we talk about privilege. I understand my privilege. I understand I have a platform. Okay? I understand that, yes, I'm a trans woman, but I'm a white trans woman, right? I also understand what it means to be a passing trans woman and the kind of privilege it affords you, right? This conversation wouldn't be happening on this live the way it is if I were a passing trans woman. It just wouldn't, right? Passing trans women are treated differently. They are given more grace. There are certain things just on the algorithm that I can't do because I simply cannot get away with it because people won't allow me.
Okay.
I think that's again, and that's why I didn't speak in the sense of your community, but I did speak in the sense of like marginalized communities, because myself as a black man, I understand what you're saying. But I think as a creator, like as someone that is given a platform by the people that support us, we have a responsibility to make sure that we're not portraying any type of intentional or unintentional harm to other people that would be affected within our community. And that's all that I'm saying.
I understand. And look, again, we're getting back to the monolithic conversation of you can interpret what I'm doing as harmful, but there are different opinions out there. Right? Like, I don't need to tell you again that the trans community, the queer community at large, the world, right? Like, if you look at the comment section, it's all negative, right? My comment section is, at least on this app, all negative. But you look other places, it's not the case, right? There are different conversations and different viewpoints of people who see, like, look, yes, what I'm doing is provocative. Yes, it is something that, like, Jesse Waters on Fox News or whoever is going to use a clip of my thing to be like, hey, look, trans people bad. But there is also a level of provocation happening that starts a conversation within some people that can change minds, right? And I'm one person. That's the kind of content I make. I think ultimately all three of us on this chat are on the same page about how terrible it is for trans people right now and what we hope the future holds. And I think we're just coming at it from very, very different angles.
Yeah, okay. Well, once again, I just say if you want this to be a descriptive conversation surrounding what will push the pendulum forward towards the societal acceptance of trans people, well, empirically, I feel as if your methodology of doing so has failed, and it's been proven to have failed. But Lily, I appreciate you for joining the live today, and hope you have a good rest of your day, all right?
Yeah, you too.
Okay, that's the debate. It was about as productive as you'd expect from a conversation between Dean Withers and Lily Tino. I feel like Lily Tino is just so headstrong in her opinion and is so unwilling to change anything about her methodology that there isn't really anything you can get from a conversation like this that changes her mind necessarily. However, the whole point of debates in spaces like this, in my opinion, is to maybe convert or convince members of the alternative side's audience to, I don't know, sympathize a bit more with your side, right? It's why, like, if you're debating Andrew Wilson, for example, you're not going to change Andrew Wilson's mind. Like, let's not be silly here. He is never going to change his mind. Same with, like, I don't know, Ben Shapiro, for example. You're probably not going to change his mind either. Like, these people grift for the right. Their whole careers are based on it. And if they admit that they even got one thing wrong, it completely dismisses the entire ideology in their minds. Like, a lot of people work politics-wise like a big floating, like a Jenga tower, right? But the Jenga tower is one cube away from falling, and if they admit that they were wrong on anything, the whole Jenga tower falls because everything is over for them. Like, one bad opinion means everything in their whole ideology is flawed, and that's how you know you've got a shit ideology, in my opinion, when you're unwilling or unable to accept that you may be wrong about something because it deads every other opinion that you have. However, if you were offered a debate with Andrew Wilson and you took it, you're not necessarily an idiot if you know what you're getting into, because there are definitely members of his audience, for example, especially if they're more fence-city or in the center or undecided, that would be more willing to, I guess, sympathize with your ideology, sympathize with your case or your side or the arguments that you make, right? Put it like, it's very, very conceivable that if you are to have a conversation with someone who is a right-wing grifter and you sound reasonable and your arguments make more sense and they sort of expose themselves to maybe sound a little delusional or unhinged, that people on their side of the fence might jump into yours. It's happened to me, it's happened to, I'm sure, plenty of you watching this video, and it can happen to a lot of people that we've never fucking met in our lives, which is most people on the internet, obviously. But for now, I think we're done. So, as always, hopefully you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to subscribe and also post a comment, because I think conversations about videos like these are always genuinely quite interesting, and I respond to a lot of comments. I've been doing that a lot more recently. But aside from that, hopefully I will catch you all in the next one. So, yeah, bye.